The Australian PTSD guidelines provide advice to health practitioners as well as individuals and their families about the best practice treatments for children, adolescents and adults with PTSD. The guidelines are based on the best evidence available from international research. The role of the guideline development group, which included researchers, practitioners and people with lived experience, was to apply this evidence to the Australian population and healthcare system. And to make the guidelines easy to access, we've developed a number of resources, including brief guides for practitioners and people with lived experience. On the Phoenix Australia website, we have a range of resources that provide more detailed information about treatments for PTSD and how to access them. We also have a selection of resources translated in multiple languages.
As a clinical psychologist, I highly value providing evidence-based treatment when working with my clients. So having a reliable source such as the Australian PTSD guidelines are really crucial to the work that I do. The guidelines are also really useful for clinicians who are wanting to expand their knowledge in working with people who are affected by trauma. Training in clinical psychology doesn't make you an expert in treating trauma, so being able to refer to the guidelines to better understand what kind of specific training a clinician might need to be able to work with those people who are affected by trauma is incredibly invaluable. Alongside the guidelines are additional resources for treating both adults and children and adolescents, including really useful infographics of the evidence-based treatments. There's summary tables of recommended treatments for clinicians, treatment recommendations, research recommendations, treatment flowcharts for GPs, alongside with supporting chapters as well. In addition to these, there are resources available for different populations impacted by trauma. So this includes the emergency service workers who I work with and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
The field of trauma is really growing rapidly. New research is being published all of the time, and it's an area that it's critical that we have really good, up-to-date guidance on what practitioners should be providing, and for people with lived experience of PTSD, what they should be expecting when they go to see someone.
In my personal experience of PTSD, the Australian PTSD guidelines weren't really available or any resources at the time I was unwell. For me, I went into the treatment process with no real understanding of what to expect or what the experience may be like. Quite often a clinician or a GP would use a phrase such as prolonged exposure or cognitive processing therapy. I really had no clue what they were talking about. So to be able to go away and research that myself in my own time, again in a language that I could understand, gave me a lot more confidence to go back and actually ask questions and challenge is this the right treatment for me? Have we considered these other treatments? But it just gave me a lot more confidence and a basis from which to work from. The patient guide to psychological treatments for PTSD breaks down the treatments in plain language so that those impacted by trauma can understand what these treatments look like and how they are applied. I think the Australian PTSD guidelines provide a real foundation for what's available, explain in plain language what the types of treatments that might be being used and how they may impact on you. They're an important resource to assist again in promoting that message of recovery, that with good treatment, accessed at the right time, that we can go on to live a really functioning and effective life.
The treatment for PTSD is quite varied across Australia with the treatment that people actually get, and the importance of the guidelines is really to increase the chance that someone will get evidence-based treatment when they go and see a practitioner. So what we would hope to see over the coming years is that any Australian who has PTSD and goes to seek help will get best practice treatment.